Oh my god, hey, welcome to another one of these videos that we're putting on the Discord for you folks that are unlisted on YouTube. Anyway, today we are going to be talking about differences between IPDA and parliamentary debate, meaning NPDA debate, of course. And specifically, we're going to be talking about differences in case construction and approach to case construction. And then finally, talking about topic strike and some tips I have for you on that. So we're going to go ahead and start breaking that down. We're going to put NPDA over here on the left, and we are going to put IPDA over here on the right. I spelled IPDA wrong. It's only 4 letters. I don't know why I put M. Anyway, we're off to a great start, gang. IPDA. D and A. Okay. So, folks behind the camera, what is the 4-part structure of a advantage or a disadvantage in NPDA debate? In parliamentary debate, what's the structure of an advantage or a disadvantage?
Claim?
Nope, wrong!
Uniqueness?
Shut up. Not you. You're allowed to talk. Go ahead. Hunter lost his privileges.
Uniqueness, link, internal link, impact.
Yeah, that's correct. Did any of those sound like claim to you? No. Anyway. Uniqueness. Uniqueness.
Not that. I was gonna say uniqueness next.
Well,
You were gonna say that next?
No, I literally had that in my mind.
Alright, keep it down. You're behind the camera. You speak when spoken to. Link. Internal link. My favorite thing about these videos is that when I watch them later, I get to see how bald I am in the back. So, anyway.
Pretty bad.
Hey, how dare you?
I didn't say that.
That's
Oh.
You have nothing good in your
It's
life.
just the
Leave me
voice
alone.
in your head.
Alright. You have to listen to me all day. Okay, cool. NPDA. Uniqueness, link, internal link, impact, right? So that's the general structure we use for advantages and disadvantages, assuming we're talking about a policy style topic. Uniqueness is, of course, arguments that describe the status quo, so are things currently looking good or currently looking bad before we implement the plan. The link is where we describe the plan itself. We say what action we're going to be taking. The internal link is how the action taken by the plan changes or overcomes the uniqueness. And then the impact, of course, is why our argument being true matters. It's where we quantitatively or qualitatively explain kind of why we're winning the debate. Essentially, impacts end up being the points in debate most of the time. Now, there's nothing stopping you from using this same structure in IPDA depending on who your judge is. And that's really what I kind of want to talk about today. This idea that IPDA, in general, has a less technical judging pool, okay? A lot of the judges have never done debate. They've never done parliamentary debate specifically. Maybe they were a speech coach. Maybe they're just a random person. Like, that's actually an option in IPDA, that a random person from the public or like a random COM 120 public speaking student can judge you. A random COM 120 student does not know what uniqueness is. So the question becomes, how do we translate this into IPDA? And I think the way that we should approach that problem in general is to approach IPDA as like dueling persuasive speeches. So for anyone here who's ever had to do a persuasive speech or who's ever worked with Coach Rob on a persuasive speech, you will know that one of the structures we like to use when we're writing persuasive speeches looks a little something like this. Problem, solution, advantage. Okay? So, this, realistically, is the exact same as this in most cases. Now, obviously, kind of for the affirmative, maybe it's a little different. For the affirmative, you are saying there's a problem, so it makes sense. When you're the negative, you're not really saying there's a problem necessarily. You're saying things are actually good rather than bad, because that's the directionality you want on your uniqueness. But bottom line, if we treat IPDA like a persuasive, we can organize our thoughts in this way instead of in this way. So when we say problem, we mean what is the problem in the status quo? What is the uniqueness? When we say solution, we mean a combination of the link and the internal link. And when we say advantage, we really mean what is the benefit of doing the plan? Why did we do the plan in the first place? Which is, of course, the same thing as the impact. at its most basic level, I think this is how you should probably be prepping your positions in IPDA for policy-style debate, meaning you have a policy-style resolution. With that said, the good news is, in fact and value debate, we actually can kind of just use the exact structure we would use in NPDA. So in NPDA, if we were doing fact or value, folks, what do we do instead of uniqueness link, internal link, impact? You actually said this right one earlier. What's the first thing?
Claim.
It's the claim. Good job there, buddy. Welcome back to the club. We have our claim. What's next?
Warrant.
Our warrant. And then finally,
Tieback.
no? Well, we'll come to that in a second. Not impact, but also implication, which is the same thing. Implication. And then, sometimes, we have a tieback. So we'll talk about when we have that. So we have tieback. When we do IPDA, we can just do that exact thing, right? But sometimes we want to word it a little bit differently, because still some judges are a little confused. And the one change I would make is instead of saying claim, I would potentially consider saying thesis. Or, at a minimum, I would recommend you have a thesis, like a broad sentence you can say that, generally speaking, describes the argument you plan on making, and then have claims that support that, warrants that support that. Like having a summary at the top is a good idea. You can do that in the form of a claim, you could do that separate from the claims, it's kind of up to you. So we have our claim, which is where we make an assertion about something, like this is true. We have a warrant, which is either evidence or logic that supports the claim that proves it's true. And then we have an implication, which is why it being true matters once again. But as Danny pointed out, sometimes we have a tieback, okay? And that depends on whether we're doing a fact debate or a value debate. In a value debate, we know that we have to provide a framework for analyzing the round. Part of the debate is not just about the topic, it's about what is the lens of analysis through which we should evaluate the round. And that requires a value and a value criterion. When we say tieback, we mean connecting our implication back to our framework, to that value criterion specifically. Okay, so bottom line, structure-wise, when we do policy-style debate, and I guess I'll indicate that up here, when we're doing policy-style debate, this is the distinction, and when we're doing fact or value, this is the distinction, right? Okay. That's the basic of structures. When you're writing your cases, try and do them in this way instead of in this way, unless your judge happens to be someone very familiar with Parley. Yesterday, we talked about how do we find out the answer to that question, and there's two ways to do that. One is, if I was there, you'd ask me, because in theory, I should know most of your judges, and if I don't know your judges, it's safe to assume they don't know anything about parliamentary debate. Tristan's gonna be there this weekend. She can kind of fulfill a similar role. But if Tristan's not there, and I'm not there is a website. It is called tabroom.com, TABROOM.com. And on that website, there is a tab you can click on that says Paradigms, and you can enter your judge's name, and if they have a judging philosophy, it'll tell you it. And if that judging philosophy says, I was the greatest debater of all time, then, whatever, they did Parley, and if it doesn't exist, once again, they probably don't judge a lot, and so we go back to defaulting to the easier explanations of things. Questions about any of this stuff before I move into the topic striking stuff? No one? No questions? Cool. All right. So now we're going to move into talking about how do we strike topics. So when it comes to IPDA, in Parley, we're given one topic. Pretty much the entire year until you get to the state and national championship, there is one topic that every single team ends up debating every single round. And then the next round, it's a different topic, but everyone still debates the same thing. In IPDA, you are given 5 topics to choose from between you and your opponent, and you take turns getting rid of them. And what is it?
That's X at the top.
Yeah, you X out the top, you cross them out. Great job, Hunter. All right, cool.
Like Family Feud.
And to be clear, so you remember, the negative strikes first. Okay, so the negative has to get rid of the first topic. So the question becomes, what is our goal when we're striking? Our goals, and what are our tactics for achieving those goals? So real quick, what do we think our primary goal is when we are striking topics? Like, what is our goal at the end of topic strike?
To wipe out all the affirmative topics.
Well, so let's pretend we don't, doesn't matter what side we're on for now. I know I said the next structure, but regardless of what side you're on, what's your goal?
Have a topic that you think you'll win.
Have a topic that we think is easy to win given our side. Our goal is get the topic that most favors us. There's no reason for you to give your opponent an easy time. And in fact, I think it's actually stupid to do that in a lot of reasons, because it's like, look, part of the skill in IPDA is the topic strike. If they're not good at it, if they pick a bad topic, let them hang themselves, right? Give them enough rope to deal with it. So this is our number one goal. But there's a problem, which is sometimes you get 5 topics and 3 of them are really affirmative biased or really negative biased. And at that point, you're pretty much guaranteed at the end, if you think about it, you're going to get a topic that's bad for you, right? So the question becomes, what is our approach in that instance? Are we still trying to get the best topic for us, or does it start mattering more that we just get rid of the ones that are worse for us? Like, we can take a bad topic, so on and so forth. So I want to walk you through, how do you do effective topic strikes for the most part? What are the considerations? Okay, we're going to do rules for the AF and then rules for the negative. So let's start out with the rules for the AF. What kind of topics do we want to get rid of and why? So obviously, and I'm not even going to bother writing this down, generically, rule 1 is the AF wants to get rid of the most negative-sided topics. The negative wants to get rid of the most AF-sided topics. But that's not useful because you don't necessarily know what it means to be AF or neg-sided. When I say the rules, I'm going to tell you how do you know if something is AF or neg-sided. First things first, what makes a topic bad for the affirmative? These are all going to be lists of why it's bad for the side I write it on. Something really bad for the affirmative is if the topic makes you defend only one thing. There's only one thing or only one option. And this comes in a lot of different formats. One of these is literally the topic is, if it's a policy, pass this specific bill. Pass this specific bill is bad for the affirmative almost always, because the negative can read counterplans, they can read disadds to that bill. Most importantly, the negative knows exactly what you will be reading, because you have to defend that one thing. And because of that, they can come prepared, right? Normally the advantage the affirmative has is because they get some wiggle room to decide how to do plans. The negative doesn't know exactly what they'll do. If they have a head start, the negative has to plan for a bunch of different options. But when there's only one thing you can do, that's really bad for the affirmative. You don't want topics where you only get to defend one thing, unless that one thing is like just giga good. You know what I mean? Like, stop racism. Like, okay, cool. Then now you can take that topic if you want. Okay, fair enough. Next thing is anything versus the field. And I'll explain what I mean by this. Okay, when we say the field, it's like a gambling term basically, which is to say, when you bet on who will win the Super Bowl, yes, you're betting that, I don't know, who would say the Buccaneers will win the Super Bowl. But what you're really betting is that all those other teams are not going to win the Super Bowl, which is a lot scarier because you have to bet that like 31 other teams or whatever are not going to do this. if someone ever gives you a chance, right, to bet, like, okay, no matter which team, like, if you basically could make this bet with your friend for March Madness, let's say the national championship of basketball, here's the deal. We're gonna do even money, so it's even money, right? You know, we'll both bet $100, whoever wins gets it. I'll let you pick any team you want. You can pick the #1 ranked team in the country, best team of all time, whoever it is, but I get everyone else. Person who gets everyone else is getting the way better side of that. Okay? Now this happens in debate a lot. And when I say anything versus the field, what I really mean is topics that force the AF to defend something is the best. Okay? Some country is the best, some value is the best, whatever. Where you're forced to defend just one thing, kind of sounds like only one thing again, right? But crucially, explicitly, the other team gets everything else that possibly could exist. Okay, so if you get a topic that's like, Hercules is the best Disney movie, it doesn't even matter if that's true. Because they get every other Disney movie ever. And they don't have to win that any specific one is better than Hercules, they just have to win that one of them might be. That's really terrible if you are the affirmative. And then after that, we start getting to things where it's just like morally reprehensible action. I spelled this wrong. Anyway, morally reprehensible act. So just like if the plan for the affirmative is just do something that is bad, you know what I mean? Like, obviously that's bad for the affirmative as far as that goes, okay? And those you'll kind of know when you see it. But for the most part, things we're trying to get rid of, things where it's just one specific policy option, things where it's just one specific thing against all other things that have to be evaluated. What makes a topic bad for the negative? Any thoughts? Based on what we know about the AF, what makes a topic bad for the negative?
The opposite.
Yes. So what would that look like?
More than one thing.
Great.
For the first one.
Affirmative flexibility. Any topic that lets the affirmative have a lot of flexibility in what they defend is god-awful for the negative. Let me give you an example. If a topic says the United States should reform, literally doesn't matter what follows that sentence, and you're the negative, you're out of your goddamn mind if you don't strike that topic. Reform just means change. They could make that thing better, they could make that thing worse, they could increase that thing, they could decrease that thing. And there is no argument, no one argument you as a negative can write that answers all of those. So now the AF, you have no idea what they're going to read. You can prep all you want, and they might just juke you. They might just read something you're not prepared for because they had a lot of flexibility. Okay? And then secondly, this one still applies. Okay? Obviously, if the opposite side is like the AF gets to defend something super moral and good, don't let them do that. And what I usually tell people is, don't let the AF defend good ideas. Okay? If the AF gets to defend, like, I don't know, even like gun legislation, which is very debatable, do you really want to be on the team that has to be like, yeah, no, kids aren't dying from guns? That's not, whatever, right? Not a great idea. So then we get to the things which are neutral strikes, okay? And when I say neutral strikes, I mean, regardless of whether you're affirmative or negative, what's a good idea of a topic to strike, okay? And there's really only kind of one main answer here.
What you don't understand?
Shit you know nothing about, okay? Stuff you don't know. And I'm not saying there's any specific priority about what's more important, striking stuff you don't know, striking, but you have to make that determination. But I'm telling you, especially for new students, this is the mistake they make the most of the time. Okay, I talked to Mary, I talked to you, I talked to kids for years and years and years. And the one commonality that I see when they lose a lot of rounds is they were striking and they were looking at it like, well, this one's kind of bad, this one's kind of neutral or whatever. And there's some topic, usually it's like pass HR 6119, the defense bill. And the kid's like, that seems like something I could research. but they don't know anything about it ahead of time. If you don't know about something, you can't know if it's affirmative or negative biased, and you do not get to look it up before you make the strike. They're going to give you the topics, you get nothing. You're by yourself, no internet, no anything, and have to make decisions. So if you don't know something about something, just assume it's bad for you. Okay? So then, there's one last negative thing that is potentially no longer the case because we got the state rule changed, we got the national rule changed, but officially it's still allowed for all other tournaments. But what's the one thing you have to strike if you're the negative?
The metaphor.
The metaphor, okay? You must get rid of the metaphor. Now, why do we have to get rid of the metaphor? Why? Why did you get rid of the metaphor?
Use the app.
Because the metaphor is just the worst version of this possible. It's let the app defend anything they want as long as they can kind of justify that metaphorically that's what the topic was about. They get to pick the actor, they get to pick the action. If you're gifted a metaphor, if you get to be the app on a metaphor, what do you think you should do? Do you think you should try and come up with a good idea on the spot that's like relevant to that topic? No.
You can do whatever.
You should have a case you've already written that you liked at any other point in the year and whip that bad boy out again. And the other guy, the other team, they've never debated it. They have no idea. It's going to be bad for them anyway. You just win. Okay? So, that's kind of the approach to that. Any questions about these before we go on to the last kind of final minutia here? Here's the final minutia. This is like kind of more advanced stuff, and it's kind of more game theory type stuff. So it probably won't matter too much when you're a novice, but it's just something to keep in mind. If there's a metaphor, you must, as the negative on this team, you must strike the metaphor. Okay? But that does not mean you have to use your first strike on it. I would tell you, strike the metaphor last. Why, if there's a metaphor and we're the negative, do we strike it last instead of first?
The app might strike.
Because the app might be dumb. The app might not have as good of coaches or as much practice as you, and if they strike the metaphor, they have just made a big blunder boo-boo. But that can only happen if you save it to last. You know you get to use it. They don't get to play a trap card where on your second strike you can't get rid of the metaphor anymore. So the only world where you get secretly a third strike as the negative is the world in which they strike the metaphor. So you have to give them the opportunity to do so with their first strike. And if they don't strike it, cool, you're going to strike it anyway, but there's just a little game theory nuance there. So then here's the next thing. This is much harder to actually pull off and to explain even, because it's kind of more heady here, but when you're striking topics, technically what is best is what we said at the very beginning. Try and get the topic that is most biased towards your side. But the problem is, that's what the other team is thinking too. So, the second thing I would implore you to think about is try to get the most, that's a weird name, most debatable topic. Okay? Gun control amongst liberals is an open and shut case. We would like it. We're pro-gun control. We don't like guns. But you're out of your mind and delusional if you don't think you can find 800 incredibly qualified sources that say guns are good. It's incredibly debatable. Okay? Now, as long as your judge isn't super anti that. Now, that's kind of the game we're playing here. But here's the thing. A team is probably gonna let you debate that because it's debatable, right? Because they think it's biased towards their side. So as long as it's debatable, that's all we really care about. We just don't want to end up in a situation. Danny had a situation like this the other day, where Danny's topic was Disney should apologize for the three caballeros, right? And it's I looked at it. I'm a professional coach. This really. I literally looked at this for like 5 minutes on my own, and I was like, I'm not even sure there is an argument to be made on either side of this topic, because usually when it comes to those topics, it's like, oh, it turns out that movie's racist. Bro, there's like no one who thinks that movie's racist. You can't even find research on that. You can't find research on the other side that says it's sick. And so it's just like, what are we even debating? Like, you're just gonna go in there with no research and now you're screwed, right? Like, it just makes the debate harder. So you always want something that is debatable. That you, when I say debatable, I really mean there is competing evidentiary claims on both sides that you could leverage regardless of which person you are. So then the very last thing that I wanted to talk about is, if all else fails, what's our goal? Topic we know the most about. Because even if we're on the wrong side of the topic, as long as we know a lot about it, that is an advantage we have and can leverage. Because again, IPDA is not partly. It's very much dueling persuasives. And the person who knows more, even if their arguments aren't that good, even if they're losing on the flow, is at an advantage because they get to leverage that knowledge. They get to ask questions that indict the credibility of the other person. So, bottom line, if all else fails, if you're like, I don't even know what to do, there's so, what do I know the most about? You don't know anything about 3 cup, just get rid of it. Even if I have to debate something that's bad for me, as long as I know about it, I can debate it. People win debates all the time that they're on the wrong side of. It's just easier to win topics you're on the right side of. All right, any questions on this? Boom, another one, turn it off.